How's it going, guys? My name is Graham, and welcome to Two Left Thumbs. This is a developer commentary for what is probably my first ever game. It's listed as a game on Newgrounds, so I will count it, even though nothing about it is very game-like. I used to like to give each and every one of my projects its own unique preloader with just like a weird something. Apparently at the time I was really enjoying pineapples. Wait, is that pineapples? Has that been wrong this whole time? Is essence spelled correctly? I guess I wasn't a fan of the spell check. Just got so much wrong there. Back when I did my interview with Puffballs United about the history of Henry Stickmin, we talked a little bit about Crossing the Pit, his first Flash game, and how basically he had discovered how to make buttons, and it was just kind of an excuse to show off that he now knew how to do that. We really had to share a laugh because that is the exact same history of how Kill Boe came to be. I learned how to make buttons, and I wanted an excuse to show that off. Goatman, we've talked about that in the past. This time I think I used a tracing of a fan art of a Diablo goat. I didn't really have a mascot at the time, so it was very demonic. Hobo Master is one of my best friends, Brandon. I kind of just would, I guess it probably would have been MSN Messenger, would have talked to him about this while I was working on it, and he would pitch a couple odd ideas. It's funny that it's the same as Crossing the Pit in the sense that it's just crappy stick figures, but Puffballs is much more polished. There's much more of like a thing going on there. This is just random nonsense. Literally no idea what's going on with any of this. There was zero planning. I can tell you that 1000%. I was just making them up as I go, and the hope is that each one would be a relatively unexpected ending. Look at that. Look at the depth that gets added to every button. Oh, isn't that just professional? We'll start with Cliff. Oh, the sound effects in this. Okay, that one's not unexpected. That's probably exactly what you would have expected to happen there. I think that was the first one I would have made. That would have been the very first one. I had the cheapest microphone of all time. It was shaped basically like a pen, and it just had the worst audio quality. I remember having to like cup it to get the sound to sound like anything because it was so monodirectional and so terrible. Garbage mic. I was also 13, 14 years old or something. I basically had to either record this quietly in a way like when no one could hear and hope no one heard me doing that in a room by myself, or I'd wait till I was like home alone. But sometimes I did a bit of both. And that sort of beautiful voice acting is the result. That's isn't that wonderful? Actually, 100% of the sound effects in this, but I had never really done sound effects before. I didn't know how to get free sound effects or anything. I made 100% of them with my mouth, and most of them are not good. Giant Rock, I remember being the second one that I made, and I think this is kind of what sparked the whole idea being, oh, the results should be unexpected. It's me whistling. Part of me still kind of likes that one. It's not executed well at all, but the idea of the rock missing and then killing him in a different way generally is funny. I don't know if the rest of that is good. It's funny hearing the sound effects and just remembering. I remember like the cannon coming out of the rock, like that. I remember achieving what sounded rock-like to me and being like, "That's amazing." That's like if I actually went out into the world and ground. If I made a real rock cannon out of rocks, that's what it would have sounded like. I did it. And then the other sound effect, I had no idea what to do, and so I did my like Donald Duck thing. And then just put a lot of heavy effects on that, and it sounds preposterous. I don't plan to watch all these twice. That first sound effect, very proud of. The second one, what? I also like that the rock moving was just kind of like, I haven't watched this in so long. From there, I think Car might have been third, and then maybe like Butter Knife. And from there, I couldn't tell you because I just started randomly making things. Those first couple were quite spaced out and were kind of independent. And I think after I had made a couple is when I came up with the idea of like, I should put these together. And they just played sequentially one after another. And that's not a thing. I was going to put like title cards between each one, Cliff, and then it would play it. Then Giant Rock. And then I pursued, how do you make buttons in Flash? It's like 2 lines of code. It's nothing. Oh, that's an HD car. There we go. I actually don't remember how some of these turned out. I was starting to think like that one's not very unexpected. There's barely a joke there. Dropping out of the sky again, though. That I'm quite proud of. In some weird way, it's like a payoff of the Giant Rock one, but in no way was I intending that. Oh, that's like one of the bloodiest ones. I guess in my young mind, subverting the expectation was equally as funny when it was as literal as possible. There was nothing that caused him to trip there. But also, don't give me too much credit. Mostly, I was a lazy animator, and you can see it in all my early animations. I take any excuse to shortcut things in any way possible. Ooh, you get to see me be a big old fanboy. PlayStation, boo! Nintendo, yay! Oh, exciting, a PSP. I never owned one. I literally have never played one. Maybe for like 5 minutes once. Oh, it's so confusing. It doesn't make sense at all. Ooh. I've never played one, but the theory was that, it would be so confusing. Not just the difficult to use, but the concept of anyone wanting a PlayStation Portable was so confusing. It just melted the brain.
What is the answer to? What?
I kind of started to go a little gorier with them. That's not really... I mean, Car, he gets smushed so much, and there's not a lot of blood. But I kind of had fun making things a little bloody. This probably would have been, like, peak Madness series watching and enjoyment, so I would have got a lot out of that. I didn't know how to make the gore and the violence satisfying, so I kind of just scribbled red on things. It works a little bit, I suppose. Bigger kick than you expected, huh? No idea what he bounced off of to end up back on the shoe. Have never had an answer to that question. Some random wall. Maybe he got kicked a second time. I don't know. I think about what I would do now, and I think that it would be funnier to have something where he tries to kick something or someone kicks him, and neither one of those has any consequences, and the giant boot shows up afterwards in some way. The giant boot, I think, also is 1000% ripped off from the Demented cartoon movie. I have a Flashlight episode talking about that movie, if anyone's interested. That's definitely what my influence would have been there. If I remember correctly, I have reason to still be proud of the sound effects for Vortex. I think I crushed him. It's very sci-fi. Started layering sound effects there. What kind of craziness is that? The funny thing is I probably didn't even really know what Portal was. Or else it would have been very obvious to make like a Portal joke. What is the timeline there? I joked with Puff that my game is older than Crossing the Pit. But it's not like it was an original concept or anything. Kill Boe is literally older than Portal. I'm such a little genius. It's not that unique of a concept or anything. It's just kind of funny that I wouldn't have even played Portal till like 5 years after it came out. Good for me. Good for you, little... Now that I actually know when it came out, how old would I have been? 15-year-old Graham. There's something a little embarrassing about that. I preferred it much more when I thought I was like 12 or 13. Damn. That's disappointing for me. Yeah, a 15-year-old shouted alone in his room into that microphone to make that awesome. You can hear the confidence. That's a devastating war cry. I don't know how anyone could bear to stand witness to that. That should have killed him rather than the sword itself. That's just the unexpected thing. Might have only really made, like, caught on and taken full shape in Kill Boe 2. Giant rock, the car dropping out of the sky. I clearly had some of that in mind, but some of these are a little bit more straight up than I remembered. I do like how self-satisfied the big guy is. Immediately plugs his own nose, doesn't enjoy his own smell, but lets out a nice I was proud of that fart sound too. Melting the guy, that took a lot of effort. The squiggles I drew in his face are pretty weird. That might have been kind of like sticking around, I think, is maybe what may have influenced me there. Throwing star. I can kind of remember that some of these, like fart, throwing star, spin in particular, these might have been some of the last ones I did, because I can kind of tell that I put the tiniest bit more effort into them. They just are a little bit more polished in their animation, even though they're still quite lazy. That one is just football in the groin from The Simpsons. And originally that just killed him. Just the football to the groin. He just dropped dead after that. And it felt too short, so I added him, I don't know, recovering and then dying anyways. Totally confuses it. There was better ways to achieve that. I don't know what my aim was there. Football in the groin is a football in the groin, you know? So it should have been funny enough as was. Didn't need to add on to it. This one was almost just an excuse. I just kind of had seen something else that had a 3D style of animation. Man, what terrible use of space in this video. And all these videos. There's so much open white space. I just thought it would be interesting to have someone like rotate in 3D. No, I did not want to animate him moving his legs in a way that made sense or anything like that. The Wii is kind of funny. He's wearing a headband entirely just to create the effect of that 360 motion. I was real proud of that. That was a fun experiment. There was no way I was throwing away that animation. It's going in Kill Boe, and it's going to kill him. And that'll be the end of that. So that was me just experimenting. McDonald's. Oh yeah. I had a really weird thing for a while there where I loved McDonald's. Super Size Me came out. I decided McDonald's is despicable. I hate it. I didn't have McDonald's for like 5 years and like actively avoided it. I even used the red to go with the yellow there. Look at me. I don't eat McDonald's, but I'm fully susceptible to their propaganda and their branding. Yeah, I got nothing against McDonald's. I really, really did at the time, though. Yes. That one would have been made very early on. I like the initial death, or I guess it went straight in his brains. There's not much of a reaction, just, I feel like the comedy there is because of how low commitment my voice acting was and how quietly I tried to deliver it. But now it's kind of funny that the reaction is just, It's funny for ways I wasn't intending at the time. I thought I did a good job back then. I also didn't really know how to separate out layers. If you've never worked in Flash, things are stacked in layers in the background, the character, and what they interact with, so that you can move one of them without moving the other ones. You can keep them separate. People are familiar with that in all sorts of softwares. I didn't know how to do that. Or I kind of refused to make proper use of it. So the two knives are on the same layer for no reason. And when the second knife goes in, it moves the first knife and they both go in. That's just me. I don't even know why. Oh, 3 layers instead of 2? What do I think I am? Disney? No, I'll put them all on one layer and I'll figure it out. I did not figure it out. A butter knife, surely not as dangerous as a throwing knife. I kind of have always loved that one because it's unclear what he's doing. And maybe the suspicion is that he would cut himself in some way. Not certain. I really loved things dropping out of the sky, though. That's becoming quite clear to me. I, at this point, honestly could not tell you out of any of these which ones Brandon contributed. Which, something marginally sad about that, but at the same time, it's like, oh, whatever. They all just kind of blend together. Ninja. Stick fights were a big hot deal at the time. I was obviously going to have a stick fight. Wow, that one has some of like the most effort put into it potentially. And man, did I ever sell those ninja hyas. It was a good voice acting, Graham, yet again. And basketball. Do you know what? I think that one was Brandon's idea. And I could not say that about any of the rest of them. I recall specifically a few that were for sure mine. I couldn't tell you what else were his, but basketball was definitely Brandon's idea. Stuffed. Classic comedy. Amazing. So that was Kill Boe, my first ever game, a game that received a sequel. The people were really clamoring for it, you know? Today I learned that I first started working on Kill Boe in 2005. And I just hadn't touched it in a long time and finally, I don't know, put a cap on it and uploaded it to Newgrounds. So there, I started it when I was 13. That's probably why some of them are the tiniest bit better, but I probably wasn't practicing a lot at that time. Now here we are, 2008, about 8 months after that upload, but apparently years after making that. We had the release of Kill Boe 2, which was basically just a reinventing of that whole concept. This preloader just started at the bottom and colored in the Grim Reaper and our new version of Boe as it loaded. I didn't have any weird, terrible typos laced into this one. This Grim Reaper, fully a tracing of the Grim Reaper from White Ninja Comics. My apologies to them. I don't even think that webcomic exists anymore, which is unfortunate. It was my favorite. I had done some small things like collaborating with the Vad Flaaten twins, Marcus and Tommy, amazing pair of animators. They have their own YouTube channel. And I basically kind of stole their style a lot, kind of shaped it into my own, but mostly this is taken straight from their own stuff. We did something together called 10 Ways to Die, and this was kind of the general design used by the characters in that. And probably doing something very death-related inspired me to do another Kill Boe. I am quite excited because this was the first ever game I ever had sponsored. Arcade Void offered me $100 to have their branding put in here. I can remember where I was when I got that news. I was blown away, didn't negotiate at all, didn't wait for another offer, jumped all on that because what? I was just making this for fun. I get paid for this? This is incredible. Look at this. Look at these beautiful buttons. Buttons have come a long way since then. They have transitions, but I also didn't really have a good way to, clear the screen. And so it kind of just resets in a way. It's fine though. Credits, there's just a few extra ways, 3 extra ways to Kill Boe. The sponsor, how great is that? Gotta give myself as many different credits as possible, even though all 3 of those are essentially the same thing. The menu music is from Hyper Andy, who was my buddy Andrew. He's a year older than me in high school. He is an amazing guitar player, an amazing songwriter, and he was playing around with a new song he was writing, and he wrote it out in this MIDI software. And what you're hearing now was the result. And I was like, hey, I'm just finishing making a thing. Can I just use this? And he was like, oh, I hate it, but sure. And so all these years later, that's a part of the game. So thanks for that, Andrew. Boe just comes back. The crowning achievement of this whole game, this whole series, is this part of the menu. It took me like half a day to figure out how to do this, and I was following a tutorial, and I still somehow had no idea what the heck I was doing, and I still to this day probably don't even really understand the code that achieved this. But yeah, I was very proud of that. One thing you'll notice immediately is that once you go through a fail, it resets to the center position. That's just because I didn't know. I'm quite proud that it kind of scrolls through the rainbow. That's just like kind of fun. That largely determined the ordering of things. The basketball, that's gotta be orange. The storm probably should have been yellow when I really think about it. The banana could have been yellow. None of it makes sense. The donut being pink, ninja being gray, those made sense. I don't know, guys. I'm trying to instill meaning in something I did 12 years ago. I don't really remember. This solo is from a Wilhelm Scream. The band rips. They're incredible. They're so good. They're like post-hardcore punk rock. Oh man, I love that band so much. I might not be able to share the actual sound because of copyright issues. We'll see if we can get away with it. I'm sure it's fine. It's pretty limited. I'm realizing how little of it I actually share. That's not really unexpected. I kind of remembered that this, maybe a little bit. I don't know. You don't know what's coming, but it's not like it subverts anything. Most of these are recreations of what's seen in Kill Boe 1, which is really fun looking at them back to back. I haven't watched these in a decade, but I still remember mostly what they are. Look at all that extra detail. The slow-mo, the photography, the buzzer beater. I guess I didn't bother with my own sound effects this time around. There's no stuffed as that comes in. It would have been funny to reuse that sound effect. It's actually almost sold less, the impact in this one. All that extra detail. The build-up is better, but the impact of the ball hitting him was sold less well. Cliff would have been the first one I actually made in the original Kill Boe and the remake. Because it just kind of occurred to me like, it would be fun to revisit some of those old ideas. And in the original one, nothing really unexpected happens. He just falls off the cliff. What if I gave, like, a stranger reason for falling off the cliff? A cheeky little cloud does it for some murderous reason. Throwing knife, last time a pair of throwing knives just impaled him. This is where that unexpected starts to try to come in. I just wanted people to not think they knew what was coming, even if they had seen the first one. I think Giant Rock, it's funny to say that because I'm pretty sure Giant Rock largely plays out the same. Hopefully with a better execution this time around. It's a better looking rock too. The sound effects aren't quite there if you ask me. Big step down in the sound effects, but I would say I think the execution of that is notably better. A lot of murderous clouds out there. Still love things dropping out of the sky. That love never went away, apparently. It's very much like the rock cannon, isn't it? Ooh, I was proud of that explosion. That took a lot of attempts to get that to look just right. Also, just the Transformers transforming was a lot of fun. This is our return of Butter Knife. I gave him something more to do rather than just winging the knife around. I don't know, I should have done like a cholesterol joke or something. I don't know. It's funny to think of what I would maybe do with any of these ideas now. Many of them I'd probably throw out. There was nothing that I came up with that didn't make it in either of these games. I should be clear about that. There was no like, I don't think that idea is very funny. Nope, first thing that came to mind, animated it, never redid it, never tweaked it. That was first attempt is the best it's gonna be. I'll never get better than that. This kind of reminds me of football in the groin because I didn't really know how to sell what I was going for there. The idea of him slipping and dying on the banana peel by hitting his head, oh, that feels too obvious. What if he slipped on the banana peel and choked on the banana peel? Hard to sell someone choking to death. Probably could have just turned his face blue or something. Nope, I had his head pop off. And then that felt too stupid and too nonsense, so I put a little WTF there. And that was my utter failure to communicate what was going on in that one. Ritual. I can remember that I can credit my brother with this one because I remember the conversation. He said, oh, why don't you use your demonic goat for this one? Or for one of the deaths. And I thought, that's funny. My brother usually doesn't take much of an interest in this. That's very exciting. I'll definitely. He really liked the goat as a character. This is closer to what the final iteration of the goat ended up being. And when he saw it, he was like, yeah, I think the goat's really funny. I like it. But I meant like that demonic goat from that drawing that you did once. And he totally meant the one from the opening of Kill Boe 1. But yeah, just another occurrence of my like mascot coming up back in the Goat Man days. Cell phones were new and scary. I guess they had probably been around for a while. They certainly weren't smartphones, though. It was still a flip. That's really dark. The slight sadness. He still lived for 19 years. I like that it's potentially left ambiguous that he might have died of anything else. I think I had it in my young heart that I was like, I'm gonna do a cancer joke, and then immediately backed out on it because I was like, that's messed up. I don't want anyone to see this who is personally struggling with it or knows someone else who is, and to think that like that's it, it's a death sentence. And so I chickened out and was like, he died later. I don't know, we won't go into it. But like I said, I didn't delete anything as I was animating that one. I just decided like, ooh, dying immediately is too depressing. Donut. One thing I really like about that one, I just committed more to like, I don't know, the reactions and stuff of it than I had at any other point. But something else I did here that I think is a fun animating trick and the sort of thing you can usually only do in animation, and something I try to do more of now, but at the time, not really. Sounds rambly, but when he jumps into the screen in front like that, that's fine. But watch when he swipes away, he's already there behind himself. I personally love that sort of scene transition and wish I would have done more stuff like that. It's been quite a while since I've done some serious animating. I would do much more of that nowadays than I ever would have back then. The return of the ninja, but instead of just beating the living hell out of him, just a quick little stealth kill, and then he bleeds, because I was worried in every single one of these that I didn't effectively communicate that Boe was in fact killed. I don't know where the name Boe came from, by the way. I think it might have been, I heard it in Garfield and Friends, of all places. Liked it. Thought it was a fun name. That was it. There's no other real history to that. You'll notice these are less gory overall. They're more violent deaths, largely, but less gore. Oh, that's a hell of an upgrade to the car. Dropping from the sky was like my favorite part of that. I didn't oversell the running them over and over thing, 'cause then it becomes more like, oh, maybe it was an accident. Drops from the sky instead. That was all of them. I don't know, there might even be less deaths in Kill Boe 2 than there was in the original, but that is my two first games. I don't think there was anything in between them. Literally just inspired by making buttons. Now my reasons for making this video are somewhat twofold, one of which is that we had recently been rearranging. It's still not organized like it should be, and I discovered this old notebook that has lots of glorious things in it, one of which was my planning for the life and death of Boe. That's what the L&D is. And the other reason is I just didn't have a video ready, and I knew I could put this together quickly, but, you know, don't try not to look too much into that. Don't judge me. This would have been Kill Boe 3. I kind of felt like the idea of just random buttons and everything wasn't that interesting. Definitely tapped out. I don't know when I would have mapped this out. I unfortunately didn't date anything. Probably around like 2009, 2010 if I had to guess. My idea here was that you would go through a full day in the life of Boe and that you would have branching points throughout. And at each one of them, you would just try to make it to the next part of your day. But most things would unexpectedly kill you. And so in a really funny way, I'm fairly certain my inspiration for this was Puffballs United and the Henry Stickmin series. And so even though he and I started in a relatively same place, independent of one another, just having the simple idea of, a game based around making buttons, it kind of came back around to me planning a project that was fully inspired by his work. I had written out a couple pages of this, and I was realizing that my ambition of having a lot of branching points was getting overly large very quickly, and I was like, this is going to take me a decade to make this if I actually tried to. But I can share the beginning of it. Who knows, maybe someday I'll do something with this, but I'll read out part of it. Because I haven't read this in ages. Wake up in the morning to your alarm going off. Only real options would be to wake up or continue sleeping. I underlined points of which there would be like a branch in the narrative. And because of these branching points, this is where it gets so overly complicated. If you wake up, show a quick routine of shower, breakfast, putting on pants. Those would have been just like a montage. Then your options from there are to go for a stroll, do yard work, or to go for a drive. If you drive, the car can be crushed by a meteor. And I'm also just realizing that the way I wrote this out, there's obviously no thinking through. It's the first idea that came to mind. That's what's getting written on the page. No erasing of anything. These are locked in. It's similarly terrible planning as was the first Kill Boes. If you drive, the car can be crushed by a meteor when you start to back out of the driveway. That was it. That was all I had for that, I think. If you do yard work, you trim the hedges when a tree falls on you. If you go for a stroll, you walk to a corner and you have new choices. So I was absolutely doing Henry Stickmin in this low consequence. There's nothing you're actually trying to achieve. You're just trying to survive your day, which I still think is kind of a funny concept. After surviving your stroll, you could visit the park, walk through the woods, go to the bridge, the cemetery, your friend's house. Water? Why did I create so many branches? Maybe I didn't like some of them? That's too much. Of course I was never going to make this full game if I was going to have 5 branches every single time. At the park, you see kids throwing a frisbee. You ask for it to be passed, and you get sliced in half. In the woods, things immediately get spooky. You're lost and find a split path. Just like you find a fork in the road. Both are too dark to see. If you go left, you're attacked by a wereman, and then in brackets, I explain what that means. A wolf who becomes a man. Basically, a wolf with a head. Why? I don't know, but that's still funny to me. It's very stupid, and I don't get it, but I still love it at the same time. If you go right, you find a spooky shack and go inside. Inside is a grisly scene with red blood smeared everywhere. You hear a creak. Your options are to run, hide, ask hello. If you hide in an empty barrel, then show the label garbage for burning, and the barrel gets tossed in the furnace. If you run, a bunch of question marks. I didn't fill that in, I just wrote question marks. If you say hello, he brings out a jam maker. He smiles and shows you it's just jam all over the walls. I didn't come up with what to do from there. I came up with an entirely alternate path. There is planning. This is the first point at which planning is seen. I came up with an alternate version of that path where you find a leprechaun and accidentally capture it. Then from there, it's like the joke about potentially granting wishes. This seems to go on for quite some time. Oh no, okay, so here I have alternate options for what. I don't know why I have like seagulls or something drawn on the back here. I don't know what any of this is. Bee with some cherry bombs and birds. I don't know what any of that is. I don't know why I have that drawn in there. I can maybe think of why, and that probably dates this around 2010. That makes a lot of sense. An alternate path for strolling. Here's what would happen if you chose to sleep in. 10 seconds to hit space and wake up. Oh, it was like a QuickTime event for sleeping, which is kind of a funny concept. If you hit space in the first 5 seconds, within 5 to 10, or don't hit space at all. If you don't wake up, zombies bust in and eat you. In the first 5 seconds, you accidentally time travel to medieval times. I don't know why. In the last 5 seconds, the apocalypse happens, and you die. Or, in the first 1 to 5, you do similar morning routine, but in olden times. Okay, so you're in medieval times, you still do like the wake up, brush your teeth, whatever. Then you can do a yard work, go for a stroll, or horseback. So for whatever reason, there's just 2 alternate versions of your day where one of them has been time traveled. That seems like so much work and so confusing to pull off as a concept. If you try horseback, you're suddenly stricken by the plague. That should have just been the outcome of the time traveling. That's horrible. But if just every part of that branch just ended with the plague, that shocked me to read in a way that I think would still kind of be funny. If you do yard work, you find a baby dragon. You feed it, play fetch, and then it grows up and stomps you like an insect. Yeah. The ideas really fall apart quite quickly. there's a lot more. It's poorly fleshed out at large, you know? I didn't think through a lot of those ideas, didn't explore a lot of those paths, but that was what Kill Boe 3 would have been. A very different experience, but that was what I had cooked up. The fact that it feels Henry Stickmin like kind of makes me think like, that in and of itself would be funny to return to. I would most likely throw out everything I wrote in that book because most of it is dumb, and I clearly had no organization for planning any of that out, and it really shows. The plague, though, and wereman, those are genius ideas. Those would for sure go in the full game. This is a longer video than I ever expected it to be, but I kind of just have fun talking about this old stuff, reminiscing. It really helps me when I'm extra busy and need to kind of fill in the weekly schedule here. I could make a separate video on some other small games. I have about 4 games that were made during game jams. Looking at each of those would be quite interesting. And then maybe just a random collection of other odds and ends. Maybe games that were never completed. I could look at old animations of mine. Some of those I haven't looked at in over a decade. That could be fun to return to. There is so much things to explore in the catalog of old creations of one Mr. Graham. And someday I plan to look back and laugh at it all. I don't expect to find many gems. I'll tell you that much. I hope you guys are into this sort of content. Thank you to patrons of the channel. I promise the Finding the References series will be back very soon. I'm actually working on a sponsorship deal, which is pretty cool. Part of why I have to bank on easy to make videos like this is that I can't do this channel full time right now, and with sponsorships, that's becoming like a real possibility. And then I would be able to make more in-depth videos more readily. So I'm excited about that. Hope you guys are too. Got big things planned in the future. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, genuinely, This is a 40-minute ramble about things I made when I was a wee little teenager. And partially, I think they only matter to me, and this is for my own satisfaction. And if anyone out there thought to watch along with me and see the inner workings of my brain in some small way, then that actually does mean a lot. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.